Morning all. Thought I'd go over some of the games now that the tournament's over from the London Classic. So going back to round one, what happened? I was up against Geoffrey Bishop, 1791, who outperformed his rating, by the way, overall by about 100 points. He's definitely, quite a good player, and I think a lot of players in the tournament had lower FIDE ratings than they should have had, especially juniors, as Paul Georgiou keeps on going on about underrated juniors, which is actually the main cause of me, losing some FIDE points overall. But as for the experience and the fun of the event, I had a great time overall, and I'm going to play in it next year anyway, and as many years as I can. So in round one, okay, so Geoffrey Bishop, I played e4, and he played c5, and I thought I'd try the Morris-Smith gambit, and it's a 30-second increment, which I suppose I wasn't really going to be that comfortable with. From historical tournaments with increments, well, a more extreme version was at Gibraltar about 3 years ago, 2-minute increment per move. This was 30-second increment per move. And of course it creates higher quality games, far less mistakes. The notion of time travel is not there. So the usual blunders you might expect, from club games, etc., are not going to be there, which maybe causes for me a slight concern, because I'm not used to really pushing myself to play accurately on every single move. I think I have, I do compromise moves quite a lot, and I'm sort of addicted to, because I'm adapted to club chess and time pressure. It's difficult sometimes to adjust to this kind of increment time limit. But anyway, the Morris-Smith wasn't accepted, unfortunately. It was powerfully declined with d5 here. So we're going to a c3 Sicilian instead. And after knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4. Funny enough, I'd mentioned something on Reddit.com just a few days back. I'd actually looked up this position coincidentally to find out what the best move here was, because someone had their pawns shattered after bishop g4, which is one of the main intentions, I guess. But white just simply has bishop e2 here. So if black tries to win a pawn, it'll be a disaster. Queen d4, bishop takes c6, winning the queen. So bishop e2's statistically, I think, a good move anyway. But black has a fundamentally, solid position against my isolated queen's pawn. I kick the queen, and it goes to a5. And I kick the bishop, and it goes to f5. And I had a slight sort of intuitive feel that the bishop, maybe wasn't best on f5, but I didn't know how to exploit it. And also it does create some concrete threats maybe of coming in. So I castle e6, now bishop f4, which if Geoffrey had played routinely now, bishop e7, I guess actually knight b5 is not a problem maybe. Or is it? Because am I threatening bishop c7 or knight c7? Maybe black can just answer with knight d5. Now, to find the scientific truth of the matter, I am going to turn on an engine here. After bishop f4, does white actually have an advantage, first of all, from a scientific point of view? Apparently it's just, okay, it's only a small advantage. And maybe he can get away with bishop e7. Yes, I think it's not even mentioned as a threat. But us humans, considered that a threat and didn't even look at knight d5, I think. Knight d5 and black's better, so that's not really a threat here. So I'll probably, if knight b5 is not good, then queen b3. Okay, knight e5 might be good. But he plays knight d5 immediately, which I think does give me a small advantage. I play rook c1 now, and I can kick the queen now with bishop c4. I can put pressure on b7, and I was okay here. But remember, it's a lower rated player without a structural weakness, with a seemingly solid position. It's like it could have arisen from a centre counter with bishop f5, which is a very solid setup. But there's no pawn on c6, I guess. But he plays queen b6 now. And the first kind of practical maybe mistake occurred here. I haven't got too many squares actually for my queen to go to if I want to avoid the exchange of queens. And there's a kind of queen dance routine you see in some other games. Like in the main classic, Adams was beaten by Carlsen, and there was a queen dance where Carlsen avoided the exchange of queens about 5 times or something, several times. And we might actually have a look at that game when I get round to the master games in the classic. That'll be good to look at. But here against the lower rated player, I thought I was getting a small technical advantage if I just played d5 here, but really I'm potentially getting my pawns fractured, and maybe avoiding the exchange of queens is the best thing to keep the tension going. Now when I say like maintaining the tension, basically what well, first of all, can the queen actually evacuate from this? Say queen e3, is that a terrible move, queen e3? Okay, as long as it doesn't lose outright, it might be worth considering because it keeps the tension. Now, maintaining the tension is a concept I've explored before, but avoiding the exchange of queens might be a fantastic example of maintaining tension because it keeps the complexity of the game going. There'll be more for the opponent to calculate. And it's a kind of cynical outlook sometimes of, both players in the ideal theoretical world will be keen to calculate variations, keen to learn lots of opening theory. Now the cynic will take that ideal world and put a different spin on it, that actually the opponent, to calculate lots of variations, is using a lot of time and a lot of energy. So if you maintain the tension of the position, you're keeping that going just to get the opponent working hard at the board all the time. And if you exchange off queens against a light rate player, you've actually reduced the difficulty of the position significantly. And I think in a lot of Tau games, there's the queen dance routine. It's just a key example, I think, of maintaining the tension. And maybe it's worth bearing in mind that if you're playing low rate, obviously the best theoretical move might be getting the queens off, but in practice, this cynical approach might be more effective. And the same with opening theory. You're going to get loads of people booked up, especially juniors, and maybe it's good just surprise people in the opening to get them to improvise, because if they're in their pet stuff or their booked up stuff, then strategically they're going to be pretty good. They're going to know the routine strategically. So this cynical kind of viewpoint, it's the perfect move might be d5, but a practical move, just avoiding the exchange of queens, doing a queen dance, maybe taking on b2 is too risky actually. If I did queen, it needs calculation to support it actually, but queen e3 is queen takes b2 on. Maybe there's something here. d5 now. So I think queen e3, keeping the tension, was a better choice. And you'll see from the course of this game, after d5, I didn't get much anyway. After ed, bishop d5, he simply takes on b3. Now if I want to avoid double pawns, it looks quite simplified. If I thought by accepting double pawns I'm keeping the pressure on, but really I've kind of blown the game already, because on this time limit Geoffrey's going to play quite accurately. It's like a Gibraltar experience all over again. It's going to be hard to win any game if the advantages are quite small like this. So first he plays knight d8, which I thought was good. The weakness of the last move, he's uncovered d4, so I pounce into d4. He plays bishop e6, and I thought I was getting a small advantage. Now I take on e6, take again, and infiltrate with rook c7. I thought it was a small advantage, but now Geoffrey ideally posts his bishop on f6, hitting this pawn, and he's going to castle as well, maybe. And when the bishop moves, he'll be threatening that. So I stop him casting, and maybe according to an engine, I've got a small advantage here. I think a tiny advantage, or am I being optimistic? 0.23, 0.14, it shrivels. And this is not the kind of advantage you want against someone who, on paper, is hundreds of points below you, you know, 200, 350 points or something. So it's already a bit of a practical disaster. You know, looking around, there's people hacking other people from complex middle game positions, and I've got this dry coming into an end game position, and it's going to get worse actually. I'm going to lose one of my pawns by force. So now he rook d7, and you know, basically I've hardly got any advantage with this combination now to win a pawn. I check, I play rook e1 winning a pawn, but big deal, I've got these double pawns and it's a rook and bishop ending. So really I was you know, that's definitely an example of simplifying too quickly so far, and the ending's not even better for me anymore. In fact, this is approaching total equality, or black potentially better. Check, the rook infiltrates, and now I can't play b4 unless I want my bishop to be absolutely terrible. So this is a dire situation where I'm actually going to have to give up a pawn, and we're going to end up with an equal position again, totally dead equal, or maybe even black better. So it has been up to move 33. A taste of things to come in this tournament, basically. Players playing, you know, much higher quality chess, much more resilient, doesn't matter what rating they are. Some hard battles. The thing is, though, in the first classic, you know, I played loads of titled players, 5 IMs, 2 FMs. I beat 2 of the FMs. I drew with an IM in the first classic, you know, 2 years back, and I gained points overall, even though I lost a lot more games. Here, you know, beating someone 1800 to 1900, 2000 is not going to get me that many points. And to go, you know, to spend 2 hours getting there, 2 hours back, the whole day, from a FIDE point perspective, it's a bad bet scenario to go in if a lot of the games are people 2000 or lower. Now, the thing is, you know, Geoffrey's given me a very good game here, and I'm having to win the position all over again. If I do have any winning chances, they're very slim. So I could have definitely drawn or lost this game, to be honest, and I would have lost a stack of points. So, you know, Ralston describes one of the deadly sins in chess as wanting, where you want results and it's not really objective a part of the position. But in this case, you know, at the amateur level, or if you're playing someone so many points below you, of course you've got to try and want to win. Otherwise you're going to end up losing stacks of FIDE points. So wanting is a bias, a human bias, to try and push the position. So I have to try and win the position all over again, you know, from a FIDE rating point of view, if I was trying to push my FIDE up from this tournament. But this is a bad taste already, that this is going to be some tournament difficulty. So I take on a7 anyway here, and we're about equal now, if I'm being optimistic, or maybe, you know, black's better now, because I'm having to he's given me that pawn, but I'm losing this, and an engine I think will give black is slightly better now. Or is it about equal? Okay, 0.01. This is not what you want when playing someone about 300 points lower than you, to have 0.00 at move 36. So anyway, I think maybe b6. We were looking at post-mortem, by the way, to track the bishop, and we thought actually that was winning for black, because bishop d4, rook d2 looks actually menacing. But maybe there's a technical escape here, because otherwise, you know, bishop d4, rook d2. So bishop b8, say, let's see what happens. What if bishop d4 here? There might be resources. Rook e1 apparently, rook d2, rook e4. That's interesting. You see, there's always technical resources, isn't there? So if rook f2, I think there's the point here, I think there's a decoy actually. That rook f8 is needed, because bishop c5, I think there's b4. Okay, so maybe it's about equal if technically I play very precisely after b6. But we thought b6 at the time of post-mortem was a good move. So anyway, he plays rook takes b3, and I have to give up the b2 pawn, and it's a struggle again. But at least I thought my bishop's centralised, and I have to make use of the 3-2 pawn majority if I've got any winning chances in the position. It's going to be with this pawn majority. So I start off with rook c7. Now g4, I start pushing my majority. h6, h4. So he takes rook g7. Hopefully h6 will be weaker, but he starts pushing his passed pawn. Check. I want to delay the passed pawn a bit, getting the king in front. g5. So I'm getting a dangerous pawn now on g6. b4. And now I target g7 with this maneuver, bishop c5, which I was pleased to find at the time. King c2. So bishop f8. Check. And now you know, a howler, I think, from my opponent, and I responded with a howler. If it's really the case, I think it is that he played rook a1. The simplest would seem to be just taking the rook and taking on b4 to eliminate his passed pawn with an advantage. But I blunder and he blunders as well. I think we both might be in a little bit of time trouble or something. So I was putting in the effort as well to analyse each position, but now here, you know, I think I've set a trap as well. b3, there might be rook takes c3 and bishop g7, so skewering king and rook. Now I think his best is rook a6, and he's going to be winning g6, and it should be okay, at least equal or better for black. Rook a6, no, actually no, bishop takes b4 here is winning for white, not that move. No, apparently the best is king b3 here. Okay, it is a bit tricky actually. I think rook a6 crops up later. Well, he plays king b2, and I take on g7. I think it's here where rook a6 might now be good. I think it's here rook a6 to get that g6 pawn. Rook a6 would be dead equal. I'd lose a load of filet points basically if I draw this. And the expression hiding to nothing came in to my thinking each day, you know, as I was spending hours getting there and back, and the betting odds, you know, on FIDE, you know, if I win or draw or lose, wasn't really stacked in my favour. Hence, hiding to nothing. If you win, you don't get much. If you lose a lot. If you draw, you lose a lot. But thankfully, somehow, well, from a FIDE rating point of view, he blundered. But Geoffrey is a very noble guy, actually. And actually, he even rejected a draw. I did offer a draw, actually, anyway, because I felt he deserved it anyway. I wasn't really... I thought I'd be pleased to get away with a draw. Well, early in the game, sorry, a bit prior to this bishop c5 takes g7, I'd offered her a draw. I found that after the game, you know, Geoffrey, he refused the draw earlier, and he just wants to play for the experience, for the learning, which is a fantastic attitude to the game. I guess he hasn't got the rating ambitions to become a FIDE master or anything. At 1791, it will take some time to get there. So he's just in for the fun of the tournament and learning about chess, which is a great attitude as well. It's probably a bit unhealthy to treat chess as a way of getting FIDE rating points, even if you deliberately enter a FIDE rated tournament. But anyway, so rook a6, and I'm better now, because basically I see a winning pattern that if I connect my pawns and try to, you know, sack my rook, then these pawns will crash through against the rook. That's the basic winning plan now. So I think white after f4 might actually be winning this position. A slight advantage here, but I think he's going to blunder now. b3, look, there's a big advantage now as my pawns get connected with f5. Okay, the game continuation. Now I did visualize a roundabout maneuver here, and then suddenly noticed, hang on, I don't need to sack the rook like that. The rook can just go one move behind the pawn. Thankfully I did spot the optimization, rook b7. And now I go for this scenario where, you know, I get the two connected passed pawns now, just f6. So I'm sacking my rook, and then the final move f7. So it was a dramatic game against a much lower rated opponent, where maybe it's a deadly sin to want to win, but you know, from a FIDE rating point of view, any other result is bad. As far as maintaining the tension, if we do an overview and summary of this game, it seemed the tension of the game went very quickly. There were a lot of other games much richer, people getting hacked, which I kind of envied actually after. Why did I allow, you know, the queen exchange? And it goes back to this Magnus Carlsen lecture at Gibraltar. When I played at Gibraltar, there was this, you know, Simon Ajstein was going on about how Carlsen maintains the tension, the complexity of positions, and maybe, you know, keeping the queens on is a basic example of maintaining the tension, which I think is especially important. You know, if you are trying to beat the opponent, you know, it's not just the technical dimension of the chessboard; it's the opponent having to calculate all the time and energy. And if you want to keep that going, then, you know, maybe refusing the queen exchange is something to bear in mind. So anyway, the queens came off, and his task was much simplified, and basically he managed to get an equal position. I had to win the game, try and win the game all over again. Very tricky game to win indeed for the first round, and I was just a bit lucky he blundered at the end, not seeing at the key moment. At the key moments here coming up, not seeing rook a6 here, which of course attacked the pawn, threatening check as well. So he just took and gave me this connected, you know, passed pawn winning situation. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.